believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Rendes, also known as Ricky Vance, and a great episode for you today. Today we have returning guest, a dear friend, and actually one of the first major guests I ever had on the Ripple Effect Podcast back in either late 2013 or early 2014. Researcher, historian, philosopher, and I think it's safe to say also friend, James Corbett, one of my favorite all-time researchers. One of the people that I really fell in love with when I started going down many of these rabbit holes with questioning 9/11, questioning the mainstream narrative on science, the mainstream narrative on medicine, the mainstream narrative on the OKC bombing. I mean, there's so many different topics that he has covered throughout the years. And it's also where I got the idea of making this show open source. I loved the fact that James Corbett would tell all his listeners that his content is open source. Share it, post it, anywhere you would like. It's about getting the information out there. It's not about him as an individual getting all the clicks or fame or attention. And his inspiration is why this show is also open source. And I tell people they can share it, post it anywhere they would like. And throughout the years, we've done a lot of shows together. Like I said, he was one of the first major guests that I've had on the Ripple Effect Podcast, and also one of the guests that have been on the most often throughout the years. And one show that comes to mind that I actually was talking to a few friends about recently is our OKC special episode we did. It's Ripple Effect Podcast 184 with James Corbett and Chris Emery. It was an amazing podcast. Brock West, who is the video editor for the Corbett Report, also added images and really made it like almost like a podcast / documentary. And weirdly enough, I was just on YouTube and found out that the James Corbett Extra channel, which got deleted with his main channel, is now back on YouTube. And that episode is on there. It's on James Corbett's YouTube channel, his Extra channel. He had a separate YouTube channel for extra content and extra videos. And for some reason, it's back on YouTube. It was reinstated for some reason. So I'll put links to that video in the show description if you want to watch that old episode on the OKC bombing on YouTube. Now, James Corbett is also one of the content creators, because he was such a huge inspiration and motivation for me to start my own show. He's one of the content creators I've been supporting for a long time, and it's not a lot of money per month, but if everybody who enjoys the content we put out donates just a little bit per month, we can do this full time. And that's what happened with James Corbett. He does his show full time thanks to all the listeners and all the people who enjoy his content donating monthly. And I hope eventually I will be able to do the same thing, where I will get enough support from all the listeners, or from a small portion of the listeners. If I can get $1 a month or a couple bucks a month from a small percentage of the people who watch and listen to this podcast, I could easily do this full time. So please, no amount is too little. And ways to support the show are Patreon. We are still on Patreon, so if you want to support us monthly, please do. We have a PayPal account if you want to donate that way. We have a Venmo account. You can also send us crypto, Ethereum, and Bitcoin. We have a merch store with tons of shirts and hoodies and mugs. A lot of the gear you'll see me wearing during these episodes. We also have a few sponsors, one being Content Safe, and maybe the most important one is Content Safe, because they help me post all my videos on all the platforms that I'm on. So it makes it very hard to get censored, and also makes it very easy to upload my videos, because I only have to do it to one platform and he syncs it to all the platforms. And James actually recently started working with Content Safe also. So now you can find his videos on Rockfin and Rumble and many other platforms. So please check out Content Safe. and let them know you're a Ripple Effect podcast listener, and they will definitely hook you up. So if you're a streamer, YouTuber, podcaster, anybody who deals with videos or is a content creator, check out contentsafe.co. Another sponsor is the University of Reason, which was created by Richard Grove, the host of the Grand Theft World podcast, and also the creator of the Tragedy and Hope website. He's a filmmaker. He's a historian, one of the most intelligent, interesting people I've ever met, and also a dear friend. And he started something called the University of Reason. He has these courses called autonomy courses, which people love, and really has helped people expand on skills, learn new skills, and connect with people in the freedom, liberty community. So please check out the University of Reason, and you can help yourself and help the Ripple Effect podcast at the same time. The last sponsor is Element Electrolytes. Some of you guys who are into paleo or keto or fasting might know the name Rob Wolf. He's a past guest on the Ripple Effect podcast. He's also been on all the major podcasts like Rogan's and many of the other that are health and nutrition oriented. And Rob Wolf is a OG in the paleo and keto community. And he noticed that a lot of people were having issues who were fasting and doing keto and doing paleo. They're having issues with staying hydrated. So he created a electrolyte drink mix. You just put it in your water, you mix it, it keeps you hydrated. There's no artificial anything in it. It's sweetened with stevia. It will keep you in ketosis. It won't affect your fasting, and it'll help with many of the symptoms that are due to dehydration, like headaches, fatigue, muscle soreness, and many other things. And if you use the link in the show description or the link on my website, therippleeffectpodcast.com, you'll get a free gift with every purchase. So please stay hydrated, get something that tastes good, that's healthy. Most of the stuff you buy at a gas station or a grocery store is full of artificial flavors and artificial sweeteners, not good for you. Even if it says sugar-free, they use sucralose or something that's not good for you. Many of them will cut corners in regards to using something that's a good, natural, healthy sweetener like stevia or monk fruit. So check out Element, add some flavor to your water, and stay hydrated with something healthy. Of course, you'll find all these links and more on my website, therippleeffectpodcast.com. You'll also find links to all the video platforms I'm on, all the audio platforms I'm on, including Substack, and also a link to my Telegram group chat if you want to connect with listeners or myself. Check that out. And also check out my other show, The Union of the Unwanted, hosted by myself, Sam Tripoli, Charlie Robinson, and Midnight Mike from the OBDM show. It's an awesome, awesome show. It's a big Zoom conference call with thinkers, researchers, and we have so many amazing episodes. James Corbett has actually been on an episode. We've had Jim Florentine on an episode, Dr. Robert Malone, Dr. Peter McCullough, G. Edward Griffin, Dr. Judy Mikovich, Del Bigtree, Sean Stone, Roger Stone. The list goes on and on and on. So please check out the Union of the Unwanted. It's live streamed every other Monday on Rockfin, and then you can find the audio on all the audio platforms and the video also on Odyssey eventually. So definitely check out our Odyssey channel. You can go to theunionoftheunwanted.com, and remember, also go to therippleeffectpodcast.com. You'll find links to the Union of the Unwanted and everything else I referenced. So thanks again, guys. Enjoyed this amazing conversation with my dear friend James Corbett. And if you haven't yet, please go to CorbettReport.com. He has tons of amazing documentaries in regards to 9/11, OKC, tons of historical things, the history of the media, which is something we talk about on this episode, and many other things. So please check out CorbettReport.com. Of course, you can find that in the show description, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace. Good. We were actually I just jumped off a Union That Unwanted episode. We were doing a Halloween special, and Charlie showed up dressed up like Buddy the Elf, which was hilarious. You know, Buddy.
Should I know that reference?
Yeah, Will Ferrell. You know, Buddy the Elf, the Christmas movie. No. Do you want making films?
I don't watch movies. I don't know.
I hear you, but with kids, you don't watch any movie with the kids?
Occasionally, yeah. In fact, I just saw Jurassic Park for the first time in my life.
Oh, the original or the new one?
Yeah, no, the original. I've never seen it, but hey, it's a dinosaur movie. Hey, why not?
Well, it's typically the originals are better. I remember during the COVID lockdowns, we would obviously everybody's bored as all hell, so we're like looking for things to watch. And as hard as I tried, I could not find something current, something recent. It was always like, okay, well, I remember this movie when I was a kid. I liked it. Let's watch it with the family. I remember, and we just kept going back.
Yeah.
Everything's been kind of recycled and redone.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
There's like
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. Movies are probably a thing of the past now, anyway.
You think so? It's.
I think culturally, technologically, for a number of reasons, we're moving on beyond that. I think the next stage of the media matrix does not include 2 hour Hollywood cinema as the medium of choice.
You think it's going to be just VR, virtual reality experience type things?
Yeah, I think something more akin to, I guess, what we would refer to as a video game, but interactive space will be the next iteration. But at least for the time being, it is 60-second TikTok videos. Like there ain't no one watching a 2 hour movie without scrolling through their feed and talking to their friends and whatever now, right? And no one goes to the movies anyway. You don't go to a cinema. You watch it at home. So it's just a completely different experience, and it takes away the mystique of, ooh, Hollywood. It's this other world that you're stepping into when you step into the theater and you sit down and the lights go down and all of that. That whole experience is going the way of the dodo. The comet has struck. I just don't think the dinosaurs have realized it yet.
That's a good way of putting it. And speaking of dinosaurs, you watched Jurassic Park lately, but yeah, that's funny. Uh, it's wild because everything is evolving. Everybody says we're living in the craziest of times. I think during the COVID era, and that I'm not that those things aren't still happening in COVID. I mean, maybe the TV force feeding you that narrative is kind of behind us a little bit, but all the agendas are still playing out and there's still a lot of things going on. But it did feel like we were living through probably one of the biggest events in human history because everybody was involved. Everybody experienced it almost,
Yeah.
which was very unique. When you look back at history, there's not a whole lot of events. Even the world wars, there's some countries that were neutral, some countries that weren't involved. It was very unique. I mean, what do you think? I know you've done, and it's funny because you're talking about people having short term or short attention spans. You're almost way ahead of the curve with your 9/11 little video. I mean, it's like you almost knew that was the future, like short videos. But what do you think we've learned from this whole experience? And do you think that I mean, are you optimistic? Not to already get to your overall opinion on things, but I'm always curious on how people are experiencing what we've been through and what's going on. If you feel like we're winning in regards to like vaccines are now a discussion you can have with the average person without somebody getting emotional and looking at you like a crazy person, and people are more skeptical of science to some extent. At least this is my experience with the
Yeah.
is your experience?
Well, it depends what circles you're moving in, right? Because I'm betting there are people out there who know people in their life who still won't question the science even after all of this. So yeah, optimistic, pessimistic. I guess on a certain level, I want to say that all of this is kind of the details. What is underlying this is, I think, ultimately the technological movement that is being made. That obviously encompasses things like the mRNA vaccine production technology and things like this. Things that literally just weren't possible a couple of decades ago are possible now. And suddenly now this good excuse for injecting this into everyone in the world just suddenly pops up, exactly as Fauci and Dr. Bright and all of those people were talking about at that conference in 2019. And I'm going to forget the details of who was sponsoring that conference, but you can look it up. In October of 2019, they're sitting there talking about the universal flu vaccine, and well, this technology is so great, and it's going to make all of this old vaccine technology out of date. But we just, it's unless there's some sort of crisis, no one's going to go along with it, as they were saying in October 2019. Anyway, because they were saying, oh, it's going to take 10 years to roll this out and cost billions and billions for the manufacturers, and they're not going to want to do it. But if the government could step in and convince people that they need to have this. So there's that sort of level of the technological strata. But as I say, I think there's the underlying technology of such things as the devices that we are using to physically communicate with each other. Not physically communicate, digitally communicate with each other. Because, Ricky, I've never been in the same room as you. And so some viewers out there may wonder, is this the same person? Maybe it's James in disguise playing both parts. They've never been in the same room. But again, that speaks to the sort of the nature of what we're living through right now. And what was, I think, at the core of that COVID experience you're talking about, not only was it the first truly global PSYOP that rolled out literally everywhere around the planet at the same time in that sort of dramatic fashion, but also the very nature of what happened there was now we are communicating with each other more than ever before digitally, online. More and more of our life is online, which of course is exactly the Great Reset agenda, the fourth industrial revolution, what they have been talking about for years. The point of that is your digital life will become as important, more important than your actual physical life. And here's an example of what that'll be like. We're going to lock you in your homes, and everything, all your contact with the outside world will now be digital. And oh, by the way, we can turn you off and on this platform, censor you from here, stop you from communicating there, put all your emails in spam boxes, whatever. We can do anything because we control the digital world. That's sort of the nature of this, which is why, to a certain extent, as hopeful as it may be that some people may have gone down, I know a lot of people have gone down the rabbit hole and started questioning things because of the craziness of the past few years. But if we don't confront the technological nature of what's happening, who cares? Because they're going to deep fake a Ricky Varandas who's going to go around saying, I love the vaccines and whatever. In the digital world, they will control that world top to bottom if we let them.
Yeah, that's a scary future to kind of try to digest. It's it it's weird because I'm kind of going back and forth too. I feel like some people are waking up, but I almost trend during that or that trend in the direction that we're going. It's almost like unstoppable. You can't prevent it. And it reminds me of like, and I've talked a lot about this on the show recently. I've had Professor Michael Millerman on the show. He's the guy who from Canada, Canadian, got basically lost his his job at the university because he was translating the first person to translate Alexander Dugin's books into English, because he's Michael Millerman's also Eastern European, and found his Dugin's philosophies and some of his work interesting, started translating it, and then of course you can't, God forbid, you share somebody else's perspective on things, and then lost his job. But going down that rabbit hole of Alexander Dugin, because I find him very fascinating too, and I think some of his perspectives are very fascinating, and just different ways of looking at things and trying to understand like the soul of Russia specifically, because one thing that the West does really well is paint the picture that this whoever the enemy is the other. You don't understand them, you don't want to understand them, and we did that with war on terror. We've done we're doing that now with the Eastern Europeans, the Russians specifically, and but they had it led me down this rabbit hole about this whole idea of the Enlightenment, right? And how after the Enlightenment we started this trend towards materialism and scientism, and it was because we almost look at the Enlightenment as like this great time in history. Some people look at it as that way, as like a positive thing in history, a positive event. But Leo Strauss, which I started diving deeper into his work because of Michael Millerman and Alexander Dugin referencing him so much. He has this perspective that it's almost, you can get that almost as the beginning of the origin story of the path we're going down. You get the Enlightenment where it's like, oh yeah, we'll leave all that supernatural stuff, that spiritual stuff, the religious wars will stay behind us, and we'll put that behind us, and we're now enlightened. But it comes at a price now. Without spirituality, without believing in uh, other things besides things that you can feel and touch and this material world, we end up having this issue now where we don't believe anything that science hasn't already explained or they basically say they have explained. And do you have you ever went down that rabbit hole and thought about that? Do you think there's anything?
Right, yeah. The whole dark enlightenment thing. I haven't read Dugan yet. I will at some point, but I haven't read him directly yet. But I'm currently working through I think it's an 800-page biography of Putin. I'm listening to the audiobook, so it's 29 hours by Philip Short. And at any rate, it's good to get some of the biographical details, although he starts out by refuting the conspiracy theories about the Moscow apartment bombings and the fact that the FSB had something to do with them. And it's funny when he lays it all out and then says, well, this is why it couldn't possibly have happened. He actually makes me believe it even more than I already did because his refutation is so poor. But that to the side, yeah, the idea of the Enlightenment and secular humanism and dialectical materialism leading to communism, fascism, progressivism, which was the torchbearer for eugenics in the early 20th century. There's definitely a historical thread that can be woven from that, but I'm leaning towards the thesis that it actually all goes back to Hegel and his reification and deification of the state as the absolute pinnacle of ultimately human history. And I think all of these authoritarian ideologies end up, whether they know it or not, going back to Hegel. And I think that might have been the sharpest wrong turn in philosophical history, but I need to do some more thinking and reading on that. So I reserve, that's just I'm just throwing this out. I'm spitballing. You heard it here first on the Ripple Effect podcast, folks. We'll see if I flesh that out with some more podcasts in the future. But yeah, there is definitely something to that. At any rate, the scientism, which has led us to the point that we are at today, and scientism, of course, being this ideology that essentially follow the science, trust the science, what Fauci says is right kind of thing, which, of course, has nothing to do with the scientific method, which at the end of the day is simply a method for discovering truths about the material world. And that's all it is, and that's all it is good at, and that is all that it can be used for. But when we start putting structuring our society around it, that's when we start to run into the problems. And just at the basic level that you could describe this to a normie, and you don't have to bring up any sort of crazy conspiracy ideas, but just at the most basic level of this is when you do an analysis, for example, of, hey, maybe we can stop the spread of this virus if we lock every human being in the world inside their own home for a month. Let's see how that'll work. Who is running the other side of this scientific experiment, like, say, the economic side of this? Because if you lock every human inside their home for a month, yeah, maybe you can stop the spread of some pathogen, but what will that do to, I don't know, all productive human activity on the planet? Maybe that's disruptive. Maybe we can't do that sort of thing. Maybe there is cost-benefit analysis. So, of course, the economists will come in and say, well, yes, our science is the real science, and you should be listening to us. But I take that with a grain of salt. But at any rate, it's not like there is the science here. That's sort of the underlying issue that we keep coming back to, that there is the science, and Fauci or whoever in whatever country you're listening to this in, it represents the science, and they speak with the voice of the science, as if the science is a singular thing that speaks this one thing that we should all agree to. So I get why actual scientists, for example, should be the most opposed to the scientism that is now being preached in society right now. Unfortunately, if you do go out on that limb, like the professor you're talking about there in Canada or anyone else, you're going to get you're going to lose your job, you're going to get algorithmically shuffled out of existence or deplatformed or whatever. They're going to shut you up, which is, of course, one of the big lessons that we've learned over the last few years. Any and all scientific dissent can and will be quelled. The latest edition of which is YouTube's latest announcement. I'm sure you've seen by now that if you are a medical professional, they are going to certify you as either an authoritative voice or not authoritative, and YouTube is going to decide what medical professionals are authoritative and adjust their algorithm accordingly. Yay, what could go wrong?
Now, yeah, and the thing we were referencing for people, if they want to look it up, the Russian apartment bombings, they blame the Chechens. Yes, other countries also have false flags and do similar things as the U.S. It's not always just the U.S. They're all guilty of doing it. But yes, and then, obviously they use that as a justification to get involved with the Chechens and point the fingers there. But so do you think this trend is, because I'm trying to grasp the idea, like, is this something that a path that the humans organically go down, would go down regardless, where like we just keep advancing, and eventually this mutation where we're blurring the line of gender and we're blurring the line of so many things that conservatives try to hold on to. Do you think that's all or do you think it's on purpose? Like, is somebody forcing this trend in that direction for a greater agenda, or is this just a part of progressing as a human civilization?
No, I think culturally speaking, there's nothing that's set in stone, and humanity could take all sorts of different directions. But when you have a small group of oligarchs who control the vast amount of resources that they do in the system as it exists today, they are going to be the ones who will ultimately be able to influence the direction of that change. And I don't think it's cartoonish as to say somebody has written out the script and every single plot point is in there. But I don't think it's like that. But I think they can direct things this way or that way. When a movement arises or when a person's kind of coming up the ladder, they can help that person out. They can help that movement, and they can starve the other ones of funds and things like that in order to make sure that society goes in a certain direction. So what direction are they trying to take us in? Again, I don't think you have to exactly be Nostradamus to figure that out. For example, I had a questions for Corbett last year about what is the trans agenda? And of course, everyone thinks, oh yeah, this transgender stuff and all of that. But no. Ultimately, the transgender agenda is ultimately about conditioning us for the transhuman future. That is where we are heading, and that's where they want to take us. And again, you don't have to speculate about this. Just look at Klaus Schwab's on the record speeches about we're all going to have the brain chips, and our digital identity is going to become as important as our physical identity, and we're all of everything that they're pushing towards is this idea of you are no longer a physical, corporeal, material being. You're just this digital entity, and we will control that digital entity in the digital spaces where we allow you to be. And that will be your life going into the future. Jack into the matrix, guys. What could go wrong?
Now, in regards to technology advancing, you've done tons of amazing documentaries. I don't even know which one to talk to you about because you're constantly putting out more and more work. That's why he doesn't have time to watch movies because he's too busy making them. But
very true.
The Media Matrix, what was because I'm sure that is timing ever a part of what you decide to release, or is it more like, okay, this is on a bucket list of things, like, okay, I want to do a film that focuses on this, I want to do a film, and then it just happens to come out at a certain time? Or is there a reason why the Media Matrix film was released recently?
It depends. Plus, those things tend to blend together at certain points. So yes, I do have a sort of bucket list of I need to do a documentary on this, and sometimes events and things will force that through. Sometimes the events themselves completely suggest a topic. So who is Bill Gates? I wasn't planning on doing a Bill Gates documentary, but at that particular moment there in the summer of 2020, I thought, it is time to put all of this information I have on Gates together and get it out there. And me and Brock worked on that for 1 month and produce that 2 hour documentary. Absolute insanity. But anyway, so sometimes it is events themselves that dictate it. Sometimes it's just on a bucket list and then events come up and I think, okay, now's the time to start working on it. Sometimes it's just what I feel. There is no, I certainly don't have some sort of strategy. I'm not weighing out, okay, this video versus this video and which one will get more juice in the algorithm or anything of that sort. It is really just whatever I'm sort of interested in at the moment. The Media Matrix documentary actually stems from an online course that I delivered last year that is available, by the way, at newworldnextweek.com if people are interested in purchasing it. It's a 6-hour lecture series on the history and the present and the future of media, really. It's charting that course of the development of mass media and what that is doing to us as a human species. And there's so much really important information, I think truly, truly important information in there that I knew I needed to get that out in some sort of condensable, watchable format for people. So I sort of condensed part of that and took it and put it in that Media Matrix documentary. So that's how it came together. And I get that it's not, it might seem strange. Why are you talking about this now? But honestly, as I've been saying throughout our conversation here, I think this is kind of the underlying part of what it is we're experiencing. All the details of what's happening on top of that are sort of details. The actual picture of what's happening is the changeover in essentially in humanity itself, in the human species that is taking place as a result of the changes in our technology for communication. And I don't want to put it in such simplistic terms, like saying that, well, I mean, we shouldn't have media at all or anything like that. That's ridiculous. And to a certain extent, humans have almost always had media, whether it was drawings on cave wall or whatever. It's part of who we are as human beings to try to present and represent our thoughts and put them out in the world in some sort of concrete form. That is part of what it means to be human, I think. It's an expression of a natural urge that we have. But carry that natural urge out far enough and with enough technological advancement, and you start getting to the point where we are creating media spaces, digital worlds that we will inhabit more so than we inhabit the real world. And there's the stat that just continues to blow my mind. But it was a couple of years ago. I should really have this, bookmarked and ready to go because I can never cite the exact figure. But it was something like the average American is now spending something like 10 hours a day in mediated space. I think it was more than 10 hours, but I'm going to be conservative and say 10 hours, which is insane. I mean, yeah, and I get it, because who isn't talking on Zoom or have their phone in their hand or earphones in their ear or maybe reading a book? Do people still do that? Or listening to an audiobook like the Putin biography. So yeah, I get it. Yeah. And I obviously, given what I do, I'm as guilty as anyone of that. I am super steeped in media all the time because this is what I do for a living. But what does that mean? What does that do to us at the human level? What does that mean for our communication with other people? And then self-reflexively, how does that start to shape the things that we even want to communicate in the first place? If all of our experience is mediated and is coming to us through the media, then all we think about, all we do, all we reflect, all we communicate about are the things that we have received through that mediated experience, more so than things that we get in actual physical reality. And at a certain tipping point, we become media creatures more so than we are actual human beings in the actual physical world. And yeah, anyway, people should check out the Media Matrix if you find any of that even partway intriguing. There's a lot of very interesting historical details about the history of mass media in that documentary that I think people should check out. And it is available, as with all my work, except for the online media course, but for free at my website, corbettreport.com/media.
Yeah, /media. And I know your stuff is now also available on Rockfin, which many of us are on. So you're on Rockfin, Odyssey, and BitChute, and I'm sure a bunch of other ones that I'm forgetting. So definitely check out. I know your Rockfin channel is fairly new, and so please, people.
It's still being uploaded. Matthew Reamer over at Content Safe is uploading all of the Corbett Report archive videos whatever 2,000 of them or whatever it is. So it's still it takes a while to upload it all.
Yeah, I'm glad you hooked up with Matt. Yeah, I mentioned him to you a while ago. He was a mutual friend of Richard Groves, and Matt's been a lifesaver for me. And his service is just, it saves us so much time. And I'm just like, listen, you can you can save a lot of time if you just talk to Matt, because obviously uploading, especially to all the different platforms, and they're all slightly different, and video is way more time consuming than audio to upload. So he is
it is objectively insane how little I have outsourced literally anything to do with my website. This is really the first outside person. I have Brock West for the video editing, and now I'm going to do this for uploading videos, at least to a couple of platforms. I'm still going to manually upload them to BitChute and Odyssey and whatever myself, but just I didn't want to take on any more uploading responsibility because whatever, I don't want to give the sob story, but people have no idea how much time. I mean, think about all the time I spend reading and recording and editing and getting things ready, and then add to that the time it spends to literally just post them. Hours of time just posting videos. So it's insane. But that's my life these days. That is why I cannot spend time watching movies.
Well, hopefully you find something to do. Like I know you're still playing music and stuff. You need to unplug. And I know we've talked about this way back in the day about our wives being very similar.
Yeah.
Less about our work and more.
Yeah.
So don't want to. They force us to unplug because they don't want to talk about it or hear about it. So it kind of works in our. It's funny because I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I wish she was more interested in this stuff, and then other times I'm like, I'm glad she's not, because I do have to kind of get away from it from time to time.
Honestly, yeah, and plus, yeah, like in my band, the other band members aren't. They do actually watch some of my work, but we don't talk about it all the time. We're not a conspiracy theorizing band, you know. It's just good to have sort of regular human relations outside of these circles.
Yeah, well, without a doubt. And so, you know, the media, and we saw it during the lockdowns, how the media can still paint any picture they want, and still, because for a while we're like, oh, everybody gets their their news on Twitter and Facebook and whatever. The media has no pull, there's nobody watching. But then the COVID lockdowns happen, I'm like, they still have, at least the older crowd, they still have control over them. And I had Dr. Robert Epstein on my show. Are you familiar with him? He was on the Rogan podcast. He's the guy who has a research company that looks into how Google manipulates people. And it's absolutely his
name rings a bell, but I don't remember. I don't remember his story. Wait, does he have a name for his website or something?
I'm trying to think if he does have a. I think if you just look up Dr. Robert Epstein, you'll be able to find him. But he, when he was on the Rogan podcast, it went so under the radar, and nobody really. I'm like, this is one of the most important podcasts I've ever heard. I'm like, he literally dissected the methods that Google were using to socially engineer us and sway us in one direction or other. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, they're doing it. No, they uncovered exactly how they were doing it over and over and over again. And then talking about the power of the media and social engineering and all this stuff, his wife had this crazy story where he was at a conference, and somebody went up to him and said, hey, I think something bad's going to happen to you. And then on the Rogan podcast, and we talked about it a little bit on my show too, about how like that part of the interview, like, just I froze just like Rogan did. He's like, Rogan asked him, is like, did anything happen to you a couple months later, after this conference? And he's like, no, but my wife was in a car accident and she died. And like, there was just like this silence. And it's, I thought about it. I'm like, a lot of people will listen to that part and think, really, like, is that even possible? Like, maybe it's just a coincidence or whatever. And of course it could be. But the power of Google and I say this all the time, mobsters and gangsters have killed people for much less.
Yeah.
Or
exactly. Yeah, you read about some taxi driver being killed for like $50 in cash or something. Let's multiply that out by the billions, if not trillions of dollars that are on the line. And hey, it's not ultimately about the dollars. I think at the end of the day, it's about the power. And there's a lot more power that you can get from something like Google than you can get from $50 from a cab driver. So yeah, absolutely. This is the thing that people struggle to think about sometimes and put in the proper perspective. And the reason why I can confidently assert that there is no real change that is ever going to happen through the voting booth and through voting yourself to freedom is precisely because this is about the most important, the access and the power over the most important leverages in society. And you think the billionaires, trillionaires, whatever, the people at the very top of the system are going to go, oh no, they all voted for candidate X. Oh, I'm powerless. Help me. No, that is not how this system works. This system is structured by the people with power to make sure that they maintain their power. And it's structured in psychologically very sophisticated ways. They know how to give people steam valves so that, people are getting riled up. We don't want a French Revolution. Okay, just let some of that steam off. Or maybe they do want the French Revolution, which may have been part of that enlightenment that we were talking about earlier and that led us down the path that we're on. So, again, this is not a game. And absolutely right. Of course, if you believe that this is all crazy conspiracy theorizing, you're going to look at that and say, well, it's just a car accident. It happens all the time. But if you don't, then you might think, well, there might be something more to that. And that's the point of an operation. Assuming that, that sort of assassination can happen, that's the entire point of it, to make it look plausible enough. Yeah, right? It's a car accident, whatever. I mean, I don't know any of the details about this other than what you're telling me. So I don't know. Was there someone else involved in that car accident? Were they killed? Were they prosecuted? What happened with it? Was it just some sort of random hit and run? Like, what? I don't know. But there could be more to that story. I'm certainly open to that perspective. Anyone who would shut it down before knowing anything more about that are the type of people who are, I think, privy to the overall psychological operation to convince them that there are no conspiracies that ever happen.
Well, we could talk about the Halloween scare because one, it's Halloween here in the U.S. and two, I think it also shows the power of the media, which is what we're kind of talking about, because the new media is Google. They control all media. So basically, it's the same way that the radio or the newspaper or the TV used to have exclusive control over what people read and what was news. Now, you have Google, who controls those outlets. And Whitney Webb was actually on the Patrick Bet-David show recently. I don't know if you saw that, but it was awesome that he actually had somebody on like her to discuss the Epstein thing or whatever. But she was talking, they asked her about the media, and she was saying how she hasn't seen her parents in a long time. She hasn't been in the States in like 8 years, but she was at her parents' house first time in like 8 years. And they just basically regurgitate what they see on TV. And like, it's this, and it kind of reminds me of, and you're always so ahead of the curve, your documentary, The Crisis of Science. And this, which is a great, I highly recommend people going back and checking that out. But we have this problem, or I shouldn't say we, but as a society, we have this deep rooted, I don't know if it's if we've been engineered this way, but and we probably have, to look at anybody who is on TV or anybody who is writing in a newspaper or is considered a scientist and has a PhD as experts, and like we almost put them on this moral pedestal where even if they lie to us over and over and over and over again, you still give them the benefit of the doubt that they might be telling you the truth this time. What the hell is that?
Again, I think this has to be an extension of an expression of something that is sort of natural to humans, but also that there is a sort of logic behind it, because in our daily lives, all the time, we put our trust in various people that we may or may not know anything about, other than they were certified, they have this qualification. Okay, I go to a car mechanic, I'm going to assume they know something about cars, right? More than I do. And we make that judgment a million times a day without even really thinking about it. And we put our lives we entrust the safety of our lives and our families' lives in the hands of people that we don't know. We have to do that for society on this scale to function. So it is unfortunately not that difficult to hijack that sort of natural part of human society and how we come together as human beings, and to, okay, well, we're going to institutionalize this and make it so that everyone will be playing the same ball game that we tell them to play. And the obvious example of that, historically speaking, if you want to look back at where I mentioned it in How Big Oil Conquered the World, I talk about it in Rockefeller Medicine, how the Rockefellers, Carnegies sponsored Abraham Flexner, or was that his brother Simon Flexner, one of the Flexners, to create the Flexner Report, which was to go around the United States and go, oh, look at all this shoddy nature of all these haphazard ways in which doctors become doctors. We need to standardize it. And so, of course, you get the American Medical Association, and you get all of these standardized medical schools that then start to standardize the education so that all doctors learn the same thing. They all go through the same experience. They all get indoctrinated into the same cult, essentially. And again, it would be too simplistic to say that it's all wrong and that everything that you ever say is wrong, and that, you know, if you just do 180 degrees opposite to anything a doctor says, you'll be right. Because again, that's almost like saying, yeah, I know that these doctors are not gods floating on clouds that know everything and can do anything. But I'm going to take the opposite idea, that they are demons with pointy horns who are literally evil all the time and trying to hurt as many people as possible. So if I do the opposite of everything they say, I'll be safe. Again, cartoon nonsense. No, most doctors, most of the time, probably do genuinely believe they are doing well and doing what's right. They just don't know enough to know what they don't know, right? Essentially, what they're not being taught. All they know is they got the good grades and they passed, and they got their certification by regurgitating what they were told, and, you know, not looking too deeply into it. They're not trying to experiment or do anything crazy. It's just, oh, the pharma representative comes and tells them this drug's going to do this for their patients, and everyone else does it. It becomes a standard of care so that they will lose their license if they don't give this medication and what have you. So it's just a system, and they're just going along with that system. That's how it works. But who created the system? That's the question. And how could that ever possibly be hijacked for other purposes? So that's the underlying issue. And as I say, I think it's an expression of just sort of the natural way that human society comes together, where we do put trust and faith in people. And the craziest example of that, I think, is the way that Hollywood actors have been venerated in times past, where when there was still the mystique of Hollywood and the big show stars and whatever, when a Hollywood actor is saying something about whatever, what the crisis, the starving Africans in Ethiopia or whatever, even if we don't take them seriously, we're still listening to them. We still hear them because they have this gigantic media platform to talk to millions and millions and millions of people and to insert certain ideas into the public consciousness. And that's crazy. Who the hell cares what George Clooney thinks about what's going on in Sudan? And yet he's able to be an operative for the CFR and to opine on such things like this. Angelina Jolie too. Like, it's insane. And it's interesting to watch that being deconstructed in real time, because now that Twitter exists and we have more sort of access to these celebrities, and they're not floating on clouds in this mystical, magical world of Hollywood La La Land anymore. Now they're just real human beings who are just self-evidently idiots and can show the world that they're idiots on a second-by-second basis. I think that mystique is definitely falling, and people are, seeing through it. That's a good example of how this can be discredited in the eyes of the public. In the same way that, for, as you say, a lot of people over the past couple of years, I think, have had those scales starting to fall from their eyes when it comes to doctors. Oh, they know everything. Oh, the health authorities, World Health Organization, they must know what they're talking about. Oh, wait. Maybe not. So I think that process is happening, but not nearly quickly enough.
Yeah, and people are and this has been an issue for a long time. I remember when I had Jim Abrams on my show, the guy who did Naked. I know you don't watch movies. Maybe you watched them back in the day. The Naked Gun, Airplane, some of my favorite movies growing up. So I had the filmmaker
Yeah.
on because he has a story about his son who had these violent seizures. They went to he basically had access to all the best doctors, all the best treatments, and all they kept doing is giving him more pills, more pills, more pills. Gave him a surgery that didn't do anything. So looking back, reflecting, it was probably a unnecessary surgery. And one day, doing his own research, he ended up finding that John Hopkins had some success with treating these seizures with the ketogenic diet. I'm a big fan of the ketogenic diet. I've been eating like that more or less for a long time now, but I also am just a big believer in dietary treatments for things. At least it should be something that should be entertained. Obviously, what you're eating is either helping or hurting you. If you eliminate the things that are hurting you, possibly you're going to get better. Believe it or not. I think that's also why the carnivore diet has done so well for people. I don't think it's that. Even though I love meat, I don't think it's some magical thing. I think it's more about what you're eliminating more than what you're eating. I think when you do the carnivore diet, it's the process of elimination. You eliminate anything that could potentially be causing some reaction or whatever. But back to Jim Abrams, he ends up finding this treatment cures his son of these seizures using the ketogenic diet because what was causing the seizures had something to do with his body, not his brain not capable of using glucose as the energy source. So once you go in ketosis and you're using ketones as the energy source, it basically cured him. He was so irate and pissed off because he's like, I cannot believe that no doctor has suggested this or as even a option. Like it was just pill after pill after pill and years of all these violent seizures, which had some lasting effects on the family because of the struggles of that. He had other and you could probably relate to this, and as a parent I could too, that one child needed so much of the attention of the family that other children were neglected and almost upset about the whole situation. So it caused so many issues. But anyways, my point of the story is that he had access to all the best doctors, could cut in line in hospitals because of who he knew and his status at the time of making these films, and nobody suggested these things. And we live in a world where most people think if the doctor's not suggesting it, then it must be pseudoscience, it must be BS. And his story is a great story of like, there was this other option. He wasn't just going to any doctors, he was going to the best doctors. And yet no, so it's
the
like
best. Yeah.
yeah.
But that's exactly how this functions. And you're exactly right. If it's not being suggested by the best doctors, then by definition in most people's heads, then it must be pseudoscience, right? Yeah. And how again, the best doctors, I don't think we're actively trying to harm that child. I think they just genuinely have no idea. They just do. No, I didn't study. We didn't get anything in our training about ketones and dietary possible solutions for this. And why not? I mean, that's sort of the underlying issue here. Why wouldn't that be included? I think obviously, from my perspective, obviously because who's that going to benefit? Who gets the rewards from that? No one in the value supply add product chain gets to benefit from people eating healthier. That doesn't. No. You eat the crap, you get sick from the crap, you take crappy medicines that don't quite cure you, so that you continue to feel crappy, so that you go back for more medicines. There's a lot of money to be made from that system, right? Yeah, that's how it's structured to function.
Have you kept up with the Kanye West story? I know it's gonna be like you're a guest on ET TV, entertainment.
I did it to myself by creating a media documentary, so I guess I should be keeping up with the latest media happenings, right?
Because it's concerning, because before, people who were getting canceled and censored, people like yourself and myself getting kicked off YouTube and other social media platforms, it was just getting kicked off social media platforms. But now the extent that they've been going to take down people like Andrew Tate, Kanye West, Alex Jones, like they're getting punishments that personally I do not think fit the crime. When people like Ghislaine Maxwell still has access to her and her bank account, and like, so actually actual criminals and people who have harmed people, murderers, rapists, don't lose access to some of these services. Andrew Tate, for example, I remember seeing an interview with him where he talked about how like overnight he lost access to like his bank account, Uber, like all these services that many people use were all just nothing linked to his name or his identity would work. Nobody wanted to work with him, and it all seemed like a collusion plan. Like everybody,
Yeah. And it obviously is. There's no way you can deny that. Especially, I mean, look at what happened to Alex Jones in 18 when he was deplatformed from literally everything overnight. It was Apple and Facebook and Twitter and whatever else. There was a bunch of platforms that deplatformed him on the same day, and not because of anything that happened that particular day. It was they coordinated to deplatform someone, and we're seeing this happening now as obviously, I think, part of the precedent-setting nature of what's going on. They want to do it in a big, spectacular way to people who are very much in the focus of media attention, so that everyone can see the deplatforming happen, and they know that this is now the consequences of speaking out in the digital age. You're going to get deplatformed, and obviously they start with the controversial examples. They're going to start with the people who most people won't even want to defend. Because if you defend, are you defending Kanye West? Oh, you hate the Jews, right? That's what you're saying if you defend Kanye West, right? Of course, they're going to pick these super lightning rods, super controversial examples to set the precedent so that then they can lower that bar, so that then it becomes Ricky Varandas. Oh, you're talking to the wrong types of people on your podcast. Oh, James Corbett, you were saying bad things about scientists and scientism. Uh-oh. So obviously, this is a part of the lowering the bar, and the most worrying part of all of this, because for me, getting deplatformed from a Twitter or something like that has never been my concern, because why are you on Twitter in the first place? I think the deeper, more worrying concern is the financial deplatforming that is now happening, and again has been happening for several years. Operation Choke Point in the US, for example, was financially deplatforming people back in 2015, 2014, 2013. People were receiving these letters. Gun dealers, coin dealers, porn stars. I mean, you name it. Anyone in any sort of, fringe or controversial but completely legal business was being severed by their banks. But now they're bringing it out into the public attention. But that was kind of happening a little bit quietly. They were not trying to report on it. Now it's like, hey, look, Kanye is going to lose his bank, and look, Alex Jones can't do banking anymore, or whatever. They're going to put these people out there to show that this is what's happening. Obviously, for the next stage of the agenda, which is the central bank digital currency paradigm, where we're going to be used to the idea that the government controls who can and cannot buy things in the economy. I cannot overstate how important it is what we're living through right now. This is it. This is what people have been warning about for thousands of years. I mean, go back to the book of Revelations. It's you cannot buy without the mark on your hand or your forehead. Well, we're almost there. We're just about to turn that corner, and most people are going, yay, yay, get rid of that vile man, yay.
Well, the crazy thing is that, like, typically I get the opposite reaction. I got intrigued with Alexander Dugin because he was censored, and I'm like, why are they saying a philosopher? I'm like, okay, maybe Putin's a fan of his work. I'm like, but what is he?
Yeah, good point. Thank you for bringing that up, actually, because that's another part of this, is that there is a certain section of the population that you can almost guarantee that when you start censoring something or saying, don't look over there, of course, there are people who are going to be like, oh, really? Ooh, that must be good. But again, if you're a smart oligarch, don't you think you use that to your advantage? It's like, yeah, censor this guy. Don't look over there, everyone. Don't look at this guy. Don't look at this stuff. Oh, no. Oh, they're looking at it. Oh, who could have predicted that? No. If you're a smart oligarch, you censor some of the people that you want that information to get out, or at least you want it to get out to the certain section of the population that you're targeting for a certain psychological operation. No, don't look at this information over here, guys. Oh, they looked at it. Wow. And now they think it's super cool, and it's censored, so it must be right. again, there's layers to this, and all it takes is for I think a lot of people don't put themselves in the position. Okay, let's imagine I am the evil dictator of this evil psychopathic empire. What would I do? How would I use this power? Think about it from that perspective. How would you trick people into, for example, taking something seriously that you want them to take seriously? Yeah, of course. You censor it, or you put it in this pile over here. The obvious maneuver is to censor things that you genuinely want censored and things that you don't want censored, that you want to get out to certain sections of the public as well, and make them sort through it. Because I think the ultimate information control is actually to overload people with, to the point where they cannot understand. You can never know what's happening underneath the cover of what information they want to get out, what information they don't want to get out, what information is genuinely valuable, what information is 99% true but 1% poison, or whatever ratio there is in there. There's so many layers to information operations like this that again, it would be too easy if everything that was censored is 100% true. That would be a little bit too easy.
Yeah, I remember the Merchants of Doubt talked about this, and I don't think I agreed with the book, but I do remember this one thing that I learned in it, this idea of it being an actual tactic, this idea of just putting conflicting information, because people will just kind of throw their hands up and be like, well, I don't know, I'm just going to believe the experts. And you saw during COVID, I mean, a lot of people are like, yeah, you're right, I am hearing that, I'm also hearing this, I don't know what to believe, I'm going to do what they tell me. So it's a tactic. But the thing is, like, recently with Kanye West talking about the things that he's talking about, Kyrie Irving's another one. Like he got censored or he's been getting backlash about I don't know if you've watched it or know anything about it, but it's called Hebrews to Negroes Wake Up Black America, and it's a documentary that apparently Kyrie Irving referenced. And everybody's writing about this. Oh, he didn't retract sharing this documentary or whatever. And of course, the first thing I'm doing is like, what is this documentary about? And is this a perspective I haven't heard? And so you're right. Like sometimes it's like, okay, or they.
So are you becoming a Black Israelite?
I don't know. Maybe I got to do a DNA test and give the Chinese my DNA information.
Well, maybe you can believe that without being black. I don't know. I don't know too many white Black Israelites.
Well, it's funny because like even there does seem like there's this, and there has always been like this divide in society with the scientism and then people that are more spiritual or whatnot. But it does seem like it's ramping up a little bit. You don't talk about it too much. I think in the past, I feel like I have run into either interviews or work where you talk a little bit more about your spiritual side or whatnot. But do you is that something that is important in your worldview? Like, do you consider yourself a spiritual person, a religious person? I know a lot of times you just focus on facts and historical stuff. But what that stuff, of course, has a play in our worldview and who we are as people. Would you consider yourself a spiritual person?
Well, as I have said before, I'm definitely not a materialist. I do not think that the universe is simply composed of just the matter that we see and feel and sensorily experience. There is more to the universe than that. And so absolutely, I am not the materialist in that sense. Having said that, yeah, I don't dwell on my spiritual beliefs and things like that, because I am not here to be a guru. I'm not your spiritual path guide or anything along those lines. I am putting out information about the world that I think is important and that I hope that you will, at the very least, consider. And I think people can see sort of the perspective and the ideology that I'm coming from everything that I talk about, the way that I talk about it, the things that I talk about. Yeah, I clearly have an interest in the human species and where it's going, and I am very much against the oligarchs and the evil psychopaths who want to control the human species. And I'm not afraid to use that word evil, because I think evil exists and must be confronted. So I think there are identifiable parts of where I'm coming from in all of that, but I'm not here to lecture people about, now this is what God is and this is how you become a spiritual person. If you want that, there's plenty of people who are out there giving that. I'm just trying to give facts about the world that I can point to and that I can show you that will hopefully bring you towards a better understanding of the world. And if this information is useful to you, then awesome, great. Thank you to everyone who supports this work and makes it possible. If it's not useful to you, you don't have to listen. I don't have a gun to your head. That's the beauty of this work that we're doing. But that's the horror of the system that they're going to bring in, whereby essentially they are going to try to once again control information to the extent that they used to back in the beautiful heyday of mass media back in the 20th century, where literally the handful of corporations controlled 90+% of what you were seeing and hearing on a daily basis. They want to bring it back to that, and they are working hard to, and they're almost succeeding, which is insane because we now live in we simultaneously live in an era where the free flow of information, the decentralization of information, is now more possible than has ever been conceivable in all of human history. The technologically possible, feasible, it's doable, but at the same time, we're about to step into the most controlled information paradigm that humans have ever lived in. And to a certain extent, that's because we're going that direction, because we are buying these devices that we know are controlled. We are going on these platforms that we know are controlled. We are putting more and more of our life and our identity and entrusting them to a handful of corporations when we don't have to do that. You can use the internet in a decentralized way, but more people are using it in a centralized way because it's easier, and everybody's on it. Everybody's on Facebook. Facebook will be there for all time, and we have to have a whole committee in Congress to regulate Facebook and to make Facebook. Oh, wait, no one's using Facebook anymore? Okay, now we have to have a whole committee to regulate Twitter. And oh, no one's using Twitter anymore? Okay, now we have to have a whole committee to regulate TikTok. No, stop being idiots. You can choose what to do. You can choose not to go along with this. And so that's the core basis of what I'm doing, is trying to get people to realize their choices and what they are and what it means when you make this choice or when you make that choice. I would say that's my underlying purpose. But I'm not here to guide people on some spiritual, metaphysical path and pretend that I'm some guru sitting on some cloud or something. I am not, and that's not what I'm here for. So I'm not afraid to say, yeah, I'm not a materialist. I think there's more to this universe than what we experience with our senses. But that's not what the Corbett Report is about.
I see what you're doing. You like to keep us guessing, don't you?
You know me, international man of mystery. Speaking of which, I have another interview to run to right now.
Thank you so much. You're always on the go. Thank you so much, James, for being with me, my spiritual friend, and and keep up the great work. Hopefully, we'll reconnect in the near future. And as always, everybody check out James Corbett, CorbettReport.com. I'll put all the links in the show description. I'll send you this show once it's up and live, and we'll talk again hopefully in the near future. Thanks, James.
Awesome. Take care, Ricky. Always appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.